The primary purpose of the storyboarding is to understand how the users will use the solution. The approach is also known under the following names: dialogue map, dialogue hierarchy, customer journey, or navigation flow. Storyboarding is used to describe a task, scenario, or story in terms of how stakeholders interact with the solution. In practice, this technique is not used as a standalone. On the contrary, the most significant benefits of using storyboarding are achieved if used in combination with other methods, like use cases, user stories, and prototyping. Storyboards are a form of prototype. However, while prototypes focus on what the product will look and feel like, storyboards concentrate on the experience. The instances when you'll use storyboarding over formal prototypes are when the prototypes are unnecessary or too expensive. When used to describe the business itself, a storyboard shows the interaction with the business process. But don't be confused. Storyboarding is not a process analysis technique. And finally, storyboards show how the screens will look and how they flow from one to another when used in software solutions, and that way they supplement the use case. The technique is used to add additional visual and textual details to the sequence of activities, summing up different user interactions with the solution. Let's make sure you comprehend this technique through a real hands-on experience. It's your turn to get creative. Grab a piece of paper and sketch the following template. For this scenario, imagine you are a business analyst in a team developing both mobile and web apps for kids' bike sharing and tracking in big cities. Your main customers are parents who should be able to use both applications to share a bike for their child, and then track them until they are returned to the central bike station. Up to this point, you provided the team with a narrative of the steps described in a use case. Your task is to illustrate the sequences of activities parents will carry out when interacting with the mobile solution. Let me help you with the elements you'll need. First of all, you'll need to identify all the possible scenarios in which the parents will interact with the solution. In reality, you can use use cases, user stories, or an information gathering session with subject matter experts. For this exercise, pause the course and try to think of the scenarios. Try to answer questions like, which steps will the parents take? And what is the desired outcome of their actions? An important note for you is that you don't need to storyboard all the scenarios that you identified in the first step. Select the most common and most complex ones. Make sure they form a story though, and make it a good story. Look at the template that you have in front of you. You'll notice that there are 3 squares. On top of each, you have a rectangle. Use the boxes to add a title for each of the selected scenarios. Try to fill in all 3 of them. Now we come to the fun part of creating storyboards. Although I enjoy using the technique, I must admit I'm not an artist. I do my best to draw the most appealing illustrations that I can, but they are not masterpieces. I suggest you do the same. No matter how talented you are, use these central boxes to illustrate each of the selected scenarios. Storyboards are visual illustrations of the solution and how the customer interacts with it. So try to depict each step in each scene. Don't give up on the technique even if you think you can't illustrate a thing. There are excellent tools on the market that support this technique, so I suggest you search and try some of them. As the next step in creating our storyboard, you need to fill in the notes for each of the scenarios. Use them to add textual explanations that will enhance the illustrations above. The text you add can be related to some optional or unavailable interactions, further stakeholder requests not associated with the selected scenario, and general notes. Good. We just covered the creation of a storyboard together. My advice to you when applying the technique in everyday work is to involve your clients in the storyboarding session. That way you'll make sure that you have covered every aspect of the story. As for usage considerations, I can tell you from my own experience that you can get many stakeholders on board. They are willing to participate in storyboarding as the method is very intuitive. Plus, storyboarding is not time-consuming, and it's a low cost to be produced. So, more reasons to be supported by stakeholders. In the end, it significantly reduces abstractness that you get if you only use use cases and user stories. One of the limitations you should be aware of is that it's easy to miss some significant rules or constraints due to concentration on the visual flow. Plus, pay attention not to lose yourself in answering how rather than why when creating scenarios. Keep the scenes simple. And keep in mind that your final product will have a different look and feel than the storyboard you created.